The American pioneer was a unique breed. Mountain man, farmer, trail driver, trapper, cowboy, miner, and explorer. Again and again, the American pioneering experience played out as men, women, and families pushed into the wilderness in search of riches, land, and a new way of life. The pioneer defined American ideals and values. A people who were free, self-made, a people who relied on themselves and one another. A people who never gave up or yielded to danger. In 1803, President Thomas Jefferson paid $15 million to France for a vast area of land known as the Louisiana Purchase. Unsure exactly what he had acquired, Jefferson sent out the famous Lewis and Clark expedition. Meriwether Lewis and William Clark traveled into the immense unknown wilderness and brought back reports of, among other things, enormous riches of brown gold, beaver, hats made from beaver fur would become the rage for the fashionable upper class in America and Europe. By the mid-1820s, hunters and trappers in search of valuable beaver pelts began a three-pronged push into the far mountain interior. From the Spanish-Mexican settlements of Santa Fe and Taos, their pathways pointed north. From the British-held Fort Vancouver, expeditions of the Hudson Bay Company moved southward. And from St. Louis, Americans pushed west into the Rocky Mountains. Once in the mountains, a reckless new breed of man evolved. They called themselves free trappers or mountain men. In the wilderness, these men cast off the constraints of civilization and reverted to a freer, more primitive lifestyle. No man or government was their master, and they went where and when they pleased. These men were loners, coming together only once or twice a year to trade goods. As an outgrowth of this free-ranging lifestyle, the mountain men became the early explorers and trailblazers of the western United States. Eventually, they discovered the easiest way to the Pacific, not by river, as people had thought, but overland through the South Pass. Here's how one person described this wary new pioneer.
Habitual watchfulness destroys every frivolity of mind and action. They seldom smile. The expression on their countenance is watchful, solemn, and determined. They ride and walk like men who have so long been exposed to the bullet and the arrow that fear finds within them no resting place.
Intent on settling the land, they were prospectors in search of other riches of the American soil. Gold. The western mountains of North America are a relatively new mountain system. Recent faulting and tectonic activity brought heavy metals to the surface as molten material forced its way up through the sediment. This activity produced veins of gold and silver crisscrossing the mountain rock. As the veins were exposed to weathering, gold would break free and start working its way down the various mountain streams. On January 24, 1848, a handyman named James Marshall made a fateful discovery.
One morning in January, it was a clear, cold morning. I shall never forget that morning. As I was taking my usual walk along the race after shutting off the water, my eye was caught with a glimpse of something shining in the bottom of the ditch. There was about a foot of water running then. I reached my hand down and picked it up. It made my heart thump, for I was certain it was gold. Then I saw another piece in the water.
And gold it was. The place was Sutter's Sawmill in the mountains above San Francisco. The mother lode was 20 miles long and 8 miles wide. Word spread like a prairie wildfire, and soon a gold rush began, the likes of which the planet had never before seen. Men came by ship traveling around the tip of South America. Others crossed what is now the Panama Canal on foot, hoping to find a ship awaiting them. But most traveled by covered wagon on the overland routes. They were called the 49ers. Over 17,000 came in the first 3 months of 1849. The sleepy little village of San Francisco was transformed instantly into a wild frontier town. By the end of 1849, San Francisco had 20,000 residents. The harbor was full of abandoned ships, and crime was explosive. It was the beginning of the boomtown era. For the first prospectors at a productive site, finding gold was relatively easy. A method called panning was used to find the gold buried at the bottom of the stream bed. A modern-day prospector describes the panning techniques used by men in the old days.
Now, this is how the old men did it 100 years ago. They just taught each other. He would take in the stream, and he would get some sand and gravel from the stream bed, and he'd shake it back and forth like this. Very seldom did he ever see a gold nugget in the pan. Most of the gold he would find was dust. So he's trying to get down to where that gold dust was. Keep shaking it, with the idea of making anything heavy settle to the bottom of the pan.
It's 4 a.m. The hours of sleep are over. Every wagon and tent is pouring forth its night's tenants, and slow kindling smoke begins to rise. Jesse Applegate, 1843.
1843. John Tyler was president, the 10th man to hold that office. The population of the United States had just passed 18 million. America was in a deep depression. Asian cholera had killed thousands. Many were looking for a chance to start over. In Congress, the theme was Manifest Destiny, and free Western land was the bait. To the debt-ridden populace, the lure of free land proved irresistible. It fueled their dreams, and they envisioned a land of milk and honey. But getting there was a nightmare as they traveled the twisted ruts of the Trail of Dreams. The first wagon train to make it all the way to Oregon left Independence, Missouri in the spring of 1843. These first overlanders cut and chiseled a road across the frontier and reached Fort Vancouver on the Columbia River that fall. The wagon road to Oregon was open, and the Great Migration was on. It was a migration built on the dreams of over 350,000 men, women, and children who would travel the trail in the next 25 years.
Mr. Jennings gave us a scare on his guard by shooting at what he supposed to be an Indian creeping into camp, but it proved to be a sheep that had strayed. It was a good long shot, but he hit his mark and killed the sheep. Thomas Flint, 1853.
The pioneers' greatest fear was of Indians. They were constantly expecting the red man to ride over the hill in full attack.
They tended to keep their weapons loaded and cocked in the wagon.
And now, oh God, comes the saddest record of my life. For this day my husband accidentally shot himself and was buried by the wayside. And oh, my heart is breaking. Oh, the agony of parting from that grave to go and leave him on that hillside where I shall never see it more. Mary Ringo, 1864.
3 months later, Mary Ringo gave birth to her 6th child.
I am never cease to be amazed at how tough and enduring those people were.
This day's march brought us to the famous South Pass. This pass, or dividing ridge, was to us what the Rubicon was to Caesar and his army. Judge Franklin, 1849.
South Pass is so gentle they hardly knew when they crossed the summit.
The main mountain is a gradual descent up, and also the same down. If you didn't know it was the mountain, you would know it from another plane. William T. Newby, 1843.
South Pass marked the halfway point on their journey. They were now in Oregon Territory. Here they also left death from cholera behind. The waterborne bacteria could not survive the cold water temperatures. But like a hungry wolf, death still stalked the immigrants.
Any kind of an accident, any kind of a severe cut, an infection, a broken leg, any of these kind of things on the trail could be fatal.
Today, in getting off the moving wagon, the hem of my dress caught on the axle handle, precipitating me under the wheels, both of which passed over me, badly crushing the left leg. Father picked me up and, seeing my dangling limb, exclaimed, "My child, your leg's broken all to pieces." Catherine Sager, 1844.
A few days later, Indians stampeded a herd of buffalo through the wagon train, and in an effort to save his wagon, Catherine's father was injured.
It soon became apparent to all he must die. Looking up on me as I lay helpless by his side, he said, "Poor child, what will become of you?" Catherine Sager, 1844.
3 weeks later, Catherine's mother died. But Catherine survived the trail, later married, and had children of her own.
The most interesting aspect of the trail to me is just the fact that these people were able to make the trip and not only endure it, but even thrive once they got out into the West, in spite of all the adversity.
A long, hot, lonesome day looks a little discouraging ahead. Henry Bloom, 1850.